But yeah, moving on to the sequel, the first sequel, The Lost World, Jurassic Park.
That was a really great uh, time, a great era for me in my Stephen time. Stephen wasn't prepping anything right yet, but I got a call from his office to come in as he wanted some drawings, and I get there, and and says he says I can't tell you what it is yet, but I want designs for a studio. It'll be the first studio built since the 20s or whatever, you know, a movie studio, right? And I want television stages, with a top that opens so you could use sunlight and things. And I want the sound stages that are this big and that, and offices and this, and like architectural stuff. And that was really kind of beyond my scope in a way. And I said, "Well, can I bring in Rick Carter to help?" And so Rick and I um, start designing a studio, and it was going to be built on Jefferson and Playa Vista. Um, was one design we drew for this enormous thing, and then we ended up, drafting in my moronic drafting way. I don't know drafting very well. Drawing uh, a footprint, a floor plan of the whole place, and then of the individual buildings, and then elevation sketches of it, like real drafting stuff, and then set sketches of it, like architectural renderings and things, and sometime around then they announced the birth of DreamWorks, and that's who the studio was for. It was DreamWorks SKG, him and Katzenberg and Geffen, and it was just so cool to be a part of that. And the developers would come, we'd show drawings and plans and thoughts, and it would be Katzenberg and Steven and I forget the guy's name, McGuire, some of the guy who built like half of downtown, like all the Wells Fargo towers and everything everywhere. These huge, real deal developers, and the meetings about that going on. And then once DreamWorks was up and running, there was all these other things coming at us, right? Now, Stephen partnered with Microsoft and Paul Allen, and so Stephen has always been a gamer, and he had some game ideas that he wanted to develop. So they sent a team from Microsoft to work with him and work with us, and we were drawing stuff for video games, and Stephen was starting to do some TV shows, and so there was some of that to do, and somewhere in that mix, Stephen started prepping Lost World. He had some ideas, of these scenes, and he was not, shooting. He wasn't even prepping anything that tightly. So he was, with his family in various places, and we'd get these faxes from, the Greek islands or something. This whole big sequence that he drew out, of mating brachiosaurs or something, So I was like, whoa, that'd be educational, I suppose, for things. And other scenes, it started to slowly percolate. Oh, and then Stephen also, he started uh, with his mom this submarine sandwich place called Dive. That was another thing we would meet there, and and so with all those things going, and other movies and TV shows he was prepping, there hadn't been a staff art job at a studio since the 60s or the 50s or whatever, when they had a big drafting room, and 100 set designers all drafting for this western and this, biblical epic and this movie and whatever. And they were working on all those movies at once, and they go from one movie to the next. And in that mix was illustrators who would do those projection drawings of the stuff being drafted. Here's the cavalry camp, and here's the castle, and here's and that's how it was for decades. And then that all sort of went away by the 70s and 80s, and so there was no staff job. But in that time, Rick Carter and I managed, with all the things Steven was bringing into his realm, then with DreamWorks, we managed to work for 2 years on different stuff. We were, the next best thing to being staff for Steven is art guys, Rick and I. And it was wonderful. It was just, I was doing the Amblin Christmas cards, from and we were, it was wonderful. It was really being part of the Amblin family in a big way. And they, and it was this job to this job to this job, and 3 days on this one and 2 days on that, and because there was no staff job, we didn't have it, but we managed to keep busy with all this stuff for that whole time, which was really great. And then so eventually the Lost World became the next movie, and Rick assembled his art department, and they started crewing up as they do. And 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 there's a lot of things to juggle for the production designer as to how are they going to do this? How are we going to shoot the RVs dangling off the cliff, and where are we going to do that? How do you make that real and not all just CG awfulness, and how do we things? Well, we'll use the parking garage, those kind of things. It's like, how are you going to do that? Well, we've got to, with enormous, driven, gun driven bolts into the tarmac on the roof, and to stabilize it so you can dangle this thing off in a crane to make sure you can erase the crane and the things to make sure it doesn't fall on anybody, all these things that just, Steven's enjoying cooking them up, and then it becomes, how are we really going to do that? And so Rick Carter, the production designer, decided that as we got closer to shooting, he made several of us illustrators, and storyboard guys. He made us assistant art directors. So we were following around the art directors and the supervising art director, and and making sure all this stuff got made and got done and prepped and ready, and it was a tough job, and I was really bad at it. I mean, it takes a real organized list, tasking mind, a left brain, which mine was sadly diminished by then, and is even for the right hemisphere's still cooking, but the the organizational, I was just terrible at. I mean, I would make lists, and I would sort of forget what was on the list. When you get your few minutes with the production designer or the supervising art director, and they want to know, oh, what's happening on this stage? What about the carpenters there? When's this coming? Is this there? Where's the grass? Where's the painter? Where's the things and the stuff? And I was like, oh my God, I was terrible at it. But it was pretty, it was great. It was just great to be on set all the time too, because then you had a reason to be there for the whole shoot. And that's where I, was talking about the way Steven shoots and the way he would redo things, from the specific to the generalness of the moment, or the opposite, and I've seen him shuffle lines around too. Like, he had a certain staging in mind with these actors here, here, and here, and the way he wanted to move the camera was different in the script, who had what line when, right? And so he would say, no, you say that, and you say that, and you say that instead. He'd swap them around. So as the camera went, they were saying all the information you're supposed to know, but it's just different people saying, than was in the script, that kind of stuff, just wing on the fly, knowing that it's still going to work, and nobody's going to know who says what, really, as long as you get the information to the audience they need to know of, well, what are we going to do now? I think we should go over there, and pan up and show, oh, there's over there. That's where they're going. so seeing Steven's methodology was pretty fun and exhausting.
It's interesting that he was so loose with the script in that way, that he was able to just change it into what he felt like was best. That's really interesting that he did it that way.
Yeah, not changing, nothing said was changed. It was just sort of the arrangement kind of,
Yeah.
that would best suit him.
Yeah, like finding the right flow kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. One of the takeaways for me from Lost World on set and being an assistant art director, um, I got sort of a sense of what the the gist is, what the meat is of that job of production design, of art directing, of creating the world, creating a space. I was assigned a set that was this old pump house set where the young girl does the gymnastics and kicks the raptor through the wall.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I forget who it was coming after somebody, but she ends up climbing up and up and up, and she's the gymnast, and she does this twirly whirlies and does a like a flying Geronimo two-legged kick and knocks the raptor through the roof and down onto pipes or something. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but that set was on a stage, and it was kind of a nothing set, but I had to oversee it getting finished. It was really tremendous, right? I mean, I knew all the crew um, from the first Jurassic and other stuff with Steven, and so the carpenters and the paint people and the greensmen were these really colorful characters, right? And they start at 5 in the morning, right? So I'd have to get there before them and just sort of hang out, watch as they dressed, and the greensmen especially would dress in these vines, and they had this formula, or maybe it was the standby painter had this formula for moss, right? That was kind of lime green, but it was lime green paint with a lot of sawdust in it, so it had the prickly pebbly thing of moss, of mole, tropical, and that guy would be flicking it and painting it, and then painting the wood to be all old and stuff, and then and then it's all dressed in, and it's beautiful, and it's an interior set. There's no exterior to look at that isn't outside. You're inside for that action, and then and I realized then they were done, it's ready. And then the shooting crew arrives, Steven, and first come the grips, and the who are bringing in electrical, and then other rigging grips are bringing in the lights, and then the camera grips, they come with what they're going to need to set up, and they've come the day or two or week before and scouted what the structure is and where they're going to need to hang lights and put stuff, and what the shots are going to be based on the boards and based on Steven, and so all that. So but when the set is done, and it's really cool, it's beautiful, I realized that it's that sort of pride of place that you have, like when you have a beautiful home or something and you welcome someone into your home, and it shows your taste and your refinement and your effort into making this place. And in the case of like that set, or in the case of a movie, any set, it's like the place that you have made beautiful is the storytelling place, right? That's just perfect for what that scene, those scenes, those moments are in there. But you open the door and you welcome your guests, and they come tromping through this army of cable pullers and drilling holes in things to run cables. And okay, that's great, get out of the way, and they all come in and march, and then it's all set up, and Steven shows up and starts doing the deed. But that feeling of being proud of a place that you built, a place that will tell that story. I think that's the what I'm guessing is the gist of the art world, of the production design, art department, art directors.
But yeah, I know you have that sense of almost ownership, if you will, of the environment, right? Like it just feels, like you created this like open door into the story
Yeah,
visually. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
no, that's great.
It was fun, and it's something I would have never realized that if I hadn't, been on set doing that or helping do that. And you just spend your time doing your thing in your desk in your place, what I mean? And but to have that little the door crack open a little bit and see what the other parts feel like to do. It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Difficult.
Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But it made it feel that much more real, I bet, to actually be involved more directly in that process. That, instead of, like you said, just like, in your room, with the pen and paper only kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. I mean, I always, for that very reason, I think I have always preferred to work at the office. There's a lot of illustrators, especially like concept artists or whatever, and they prefer, once they get their marching orders from the production designer or the art director, whatever, they bury themselves and do that key frame or do that moment in a painting or do that set with the all that's around it or whatever, and that's whatever it takes, 2-3 days a week or something to do that. But I've always found the energy of the office, of the art department, of the production department, of everybody there is just is really fulfilling to be a part of that and to really be a part of it by being there, and you get to know stuff and hear stuff that you wouldn't if you went away for a week to do a painting or whatever. You're storyboarding this stuff, and you can go ask the art director or get answers on how big is this place, or where's the door, or what is it now? Oh, that's changed, it's now going to be over here, and it's a hole in the ground or whatever. So otherwise you'd be at home for the 3-4 days, 5 drawing the thing, you come in and it's like, oh, that changed, sort of. But here you sort of know, and it makes you more useful.
No, that's really cool, especially with the worker village that you're talking about in the Lost World. Like that's actually
All right.
a very
Right.
beloved set for fans of the film. In the exteriors too, that they did those amazing exteriors on the Universal backlot that used to be
Yeah.
there. They got pushed aside by the War of the Worlds plane crash, I think,
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was fun. That was really cool. That they made a very detailed model of it too, which was beautiful. Like literally out of, from scratch. There's a model maker who does everything to scale, perfect sizes, distances, and even as far as, dressing in the greens on a tabletop model, like a train set model looking thing. And that's very helpful. It's helpful for then the director can come in and get an instant sense of space and place and and what the action is, where the action can take place. That really fun bit in the gas station, coming in and out and in and out. It was brilliant. That was really cool. I don't remember how. I mean, that's the kind of thing. I suppose I don't remember if it was thought of ahead of time or it was thought of when it was seen. You know, um, there's a really funny version of that, the Orson Welles movie, Touch of Evil, right? Yeah, I think there's like a Dutch door with the top open and a window, sliding window, and he's inside leaning out the window, and she's trying to lean in to talk to him as he's leaning out, and he's so nervous that he keeps getting the timing wrong. It's just it's a brilliant moment. It's essentially, like that, like the Raptor and Goldblum, in and out, and in and out, and in and out.
I
Really,
wonder if Spielberg was inspired by that in terms of shaping that scene, perhaps. I
yeah,
mean,
right.
couldn't put
Probably.
it past it.
I mean, it's not anything exactly new. I mean, it's almost like a vaudeville thing,
Yeah.
back to the 30s or something.
Yeah.
But when it's done well, it's pretty great.
Yeah, especially in that kind of situation, it almost becomes like a dark comedy in that case with a raptor.
Yeah.
You know? It's like I
Not-
could die from this version. That's okay.
right.
Well, and it's interesting because you mentioned the big model that was made for that abandoned worker village, and I know the original ending of the movie was supposed to be more focused on that set. Like it had, I guess, the hunters like running along the rooftops or something like that. But then it didn't have the pteranodons come in at the end, and kind of peck them off as they try to leave the island. But then I think it was, late in the game, Spielberg wanted to change it to the San Diego sequence, if I'm not mistaken. Um, was that how it kind of went down?
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right. I'd forgotten about that. There was, yeah, I think we did do drawings. I don't know that we fully boarded it, but we did some kind of exploratory sketches, waiting for Stephen to come draw it or what have you, um, of rooftop chase. And maybe that's where that water pump house sort of fit in, because there was like right climbing in and up and around. Um, and yeah, and then I don't know. Yeah, it didn't. Nothing came of it. I remember Stephen uh, was reluctant to bring the dinosaurs to the mainland. Um, just like I said, because then it's like that's like its own movie. That's just like huge, and and then what? Kind of, oh dear, how do we get out of this now? But the Stephen and the writers and probably Rick Carter, I mean, the brain trust of what's the T-Rex after? What's gonna make this just big enough to be a big bang, visually and fun wise, and then how do we get the T-Rex back off the island? I mean, off the back onto the boat. I mean, that kind of stuff that all had to be sort of accounted for and all in a row, before we launched on adding that kicker ending of that. And it turned out pretty fun. I think at the time, the Roland Emmerich movie, Independence Day came out. Yeah, it came out that summer, I think, before we started filming. And I think we started filming that in the fall, Lost World. But in the summer that came out, and and part of its success is that it just did everything. It did everything you could ever want to do, just unapologetically, just like did it. It's like you're punching the alien, you're crashing the ship, you're flying the ship. The president's a top gun. It's like you find your wife, you save the world, you do and you do it all on the 4th of July. Damn it, it was like wow, and just so ballsy, and fun, and just fun with it. I mean, Will Smith, I think, added a real layer of panache and funniness over it. And just and after that, it was kind of like, oh my god, you can't not do the big, now. You can now gotta now we've got to up it, and now we've got to, what do we do? We got to bring the dinosaurs to America, and you know and I think that's where that was born.
That's interesting because it does make a lot of sense that the almost pressure from the competition, if you will, kind of inspired the bigger ending than what was
Yeah.
originally planned. That's really
Oh yeah,
interesting.
and that was such a huge hit. It was
Yeah.
just gigantic and enjoyable too. It
Oh,
wasn't
I
just,
love that movie.
yeah, it wasn't just dumb. It was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was, yeah, you're right. That was kind of that kick in the pants to move it, to go big before you go home.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting because that San Diego sequence kind of split the fans in a way in terms of if they like wanted to see that or not. Kind of like what you're saying, like, it almost feels like a different movie. So like why are we doing this now? Kind of
Yeah,
thing. So
yeah,
some people did feel that way anyway. Um,
Yeah.
this despite the at the time. Um but I personally love the sequence, and I remember you did some storyboards of like when the T-Rex is in San Diego and it visits like a kid at his house.
That's brilliant. In
Yeah.
the fish tank going.
Yeah.
That was so great. It was so fun. It was kind of, what you were just saying though about that feeling tacked on some level. I wouldn't be surprised if that was also Steven's instincts about it, from the get-go, and that's the downside is, just that, but that does sound logical. But yeah, that there was just and the dog in the doghouse, and you and how do you pay that off without, hurting everyone's feelings that the dog gets eaten?
Yeah, I think it still did upset people, but at least you didn't actually see it happening. Then that
Right.
would have
You
been
just
like,
see
wait.
I think you just see the chain hanging from his mouth, right?
Yeah.
And the ball, the big 76 ball. Bong,
Yes.
bong, bong. That
And
was
good product
spectacular.
placement.
That was they really did that. They had the mechanical effects. Michael Antieri, you got to rig that and have it weighted just right, and practice it on some similar asphalt or whatever, and in similar circumstances, and see what you're going to get, and film that and show the boss. And if it starts here, it's going to bounce 3 times and then roll or whatever. I mean, all that stuff is figured out, and so nobody gets their toes run over or worse.
Jeez, yeah, no kidding. Crush
Yeah.
a car.
Yeah, that would do the deed.
I know during like the sequence when the Rex is at the house, like right after he kills the dog, I've read in some places, I'm not sure if it's true or if you would know, but like after that, the T-Rex crashes into the house, like crashes its head at least into the house where the kid is.
Yeah.
And like, did they ever film that? Because some
No.
people, no, they didn't. Okay.
No, I think I drew something like that. I think the parents were there, and I think I vaguely remember something like that. And the snout stops just short of the parents, pinned against the wall or whatever. I think after the dog beat, the idea of putting a kid in that much jeopardy or terrorizing a kid was probably a nah.
It was a little too
Enough.
far.
Yeah, we've done enough with this. On to the streets of Burbank, which they shot the bus scene, chasing the bus, and then again that was practical effects on that bus. I think it's on a cable, 300-foot cable or something, that's zipping the bus down the street, and it's got air rams or pulleys, or they kind of what do they call that, when it sucks in something, so the side is rigged and built inside with these kind of uh air jets that, on cue, they hit the trigger. Steven says no, and then it crinkles the whole side of the bus in, right, and the
Yeah.
thin glass, the breakaway glass, does its thing naturally with all that impact. And then you just got to sort of match the dent when you're animating it, I suppose, match the dent with the T-Rex's head. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. And again, that's something nowadays would just be, CGI mostly,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. Yeah.
losing that realism of having an actual physical item on the set cave in like that. It's so cool.
There was the scene in the trailer before it goes over the cliff. The T-Rex was going to break the windshield out, does, I think. And Janusz, the DP, the director of photography, spectacularly talented. He says, well, I'll film it. He didn't want his guys to get hurt in case something happens. And so he's inside the the RV with handheld, and the T-Rex head weighs like 2 tons. It's got all this superstructure under it. That's the whole base of it is a 747 flight simulator. I mean, it's like that much power and weight and damage it can do. And I remember the head swings into the windshield and just breaks it out, and Janos screamed. It was so real and terrifying. It was like, bam, yeah. And one of the, how RVs have the little doors underneath where you put your stuff or whatever,
like a storage kind of thing.
yeah, storage thing. The door was like 3 feet square, and it somehow snapped off on one take, and it's like 100 feet in the air, and the thing snaps up, and this steel door comes twirling down like a frisbee with all the crew down below. They're filming, the cameras down there. There's 50, 60 people down there. That was terrifying.
Jeez.
There's more fun. Didn't hit anybody, thank God.
Oh, that's good. I probably would have heard about it if someone did get hit.
God. I would have killed them. Yeah. Yeah, it was just great. Another set, I was myself, John Berger, an art director, set designer. We were in charge of the redwoods. We went up there a couple weeks before the shoot. The greens came up, I think, the second week, and surprisingly, you're in the redwoods, but you still have to dress in greenery, to make it look primordial. It must have been a gajillion giant ferns they put in there. That was up in Humboldt, in various locations up there, like the herding scene, when they're the hunters are trying to noose the hadrosaurs. I think the hadrosaurs, the ones with the big snorkel head, and they're on ATVs with the big hooks, or Jeeps or whatever, all that cool stuff. That was on a private ranch that had a gigantic meadow. And they would go one way and then turn around and then race back the other way and cover it. And Stephen was, I was sitting out in the meadow storyboarding on a little army stool, folding stool. I got a picture of that. And Stephen comes riding up on a dirt bike. And he's just checking in, make sure everything's okay or whatever, and off he goes. And it was like, damn, man, I can't ride a motorcycle. That's so cool. And I heard a story. He said that when he was a kid, he saw, like in Life magazine or something, David Lean making of Lawrence of Arabia, and he David Lean, the director, was riding around on a dirt bike in the dunes, just to get around, like a lot of crew. And Stephen thought, that's the job I want to do.
So forget being a director. I just want to drive around.
Well, he wants to do both. He wants to be a director and get to ride a motorcycle. There's a shot where I don't know who the hunter is in that. I forget the Postlethwaite, Peter Postlethwaite.
Yeah, he played Roland Tembo as the character.
Yeah, there you go. Listen to you. Look at you. You're like, I am Derek Database.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, there was a scene where he, I forget what just happened. He missed the shot or something, or the gun jam or whatever. But he comes walking into camera, and the camera tilts down as he steps in this big T-Rex footprint in the mud that's full of water. And I dressed that muddy footprint in. We're on the outskirts of, I don't know if it's that meadow or some other part of the woods, and we had some kids help and schlep up 5-gallon buckets full of mud from a creek down to because there was not naturally mud, and there's no spigot around to turn on to make the mud. So there's buckets and buckets and buckets and buckets, and it took all morning practically to put this little area of mud, maybe 30 feet by 10, 12. And Stan Winston's guys had made these giant fiberglass feet print, like the T-Rex size and a smaller Gallimimus size, the big
Mm,
three-toed. There's three-toed, like the famous dinosaur three-toed footprint. And we were to plop them down in the mud as if there was a track of the T-Rex ran through here. And
mm.
and and then Steven said, well, make it look like he was chasing something, right? So we had those smaller feet print. And Jack Horner was there all the time, right? Jack, the dinosaur expert, right? The
Yeah.
archaeologist. And he was just the coolest freaking dude ever, man. He was just, and he was very quiet and very, very focused, scientist focused, but this outdoorsman. I mean, rumor was that he was a lerp in Vietnam, right? So he comes where we're at, and it was one of the greatest moments ever, where he stands there and he looks at the stretch, right, and he looks around at the bushes, and he says, and he lays out this whole T-Rex hunting scenario, right? He goes, I think the T-Rex would be behind those trees, the big copse of fern and trees, and when the Gallimimus comes through, he would come out and do, blah blah, blah, and he just laid it. And so we were going with the big feet print. How was that? Yeah, let's make him go that way. And so we had this whole story as per Jack of the hunt of the hunt from 65 million years ago. And and then it was just used for the one footprint, the one shot where
It's like,
that
damn
was,
it, why didn't you show more of that, Steven? All that effort put into it.
yeah, you tell him, I'm not.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't blame you. There was an early outline that was discovered for The Lost World that depicted Isla Nublar, the island from the first movie, being briefly visited, then blown up. Do you remember having to depict that at all, like in your storyboards?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember that being there. Yeah, and again, that's like what does it get you kind of thing. You know what I mean? You got 2 hours to and which was the last one they did? Dominion or
Fallen Kingdom,
Fallen
that's the one.
Kingdom? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like that. The ending of that was just so depressing, terrible.
Yeah.
It's like, no,
Like,
I've
how could you
known
do
these
that?
I've known these dinosaurs for 30 years, dude. You like snuffing them out like I don't know what, like Candy Crush or something, like
Exactly.
stop. It was, you know what I mean? You go there and then what do you got? You've got a
Yeah.
you've got a Debbie Downer for the next hour and a half.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans were upset with the island being, blown up by the volcano in that case. Yeah, it was very,
Yeah.
for me, it was upsetting too, because, I love the, like locations there, like the old visitor center ruins and the first Jurassic World movie. It was really cool to see those again and everything. So it's
Yeah.
just sad to see it all be just burned away and
Yeah, it's
everything.
it's they do that a lot, and in the superhero movies too, and in the Star Wars movies too. They always got to do something drastic and tragic to bring some kind of emotion to it. It's like,
Yeah.
just stop, write some good dialogue that tugs at your heartstrings.
Yeah.
Don't slaughter everything just to make people look up from their popcorn. You go, what? What happened?
Do you remember anything involving like the carnivores, like the big horned like T-Rexes that would camouflage? Because that was in the book, the second book, but I was wondering if they were ever considered for the second movie at all.
I don't think so. I think with Stephen had the reins of it, and he had I don't know if this was part of it, but I'm just guessing, that spitballing here, that in my opinion, only that in the first one, he didn't want to depict the dinosaurs like monsters, for one, not particularly. They did some monstrous things, but it was kind of nature's way kind of thing. It wasn't they weren't diabolical or whatever, and he didn't want to personalize them too much. He didn't want It was never the dinosaur's story. We were never over the dinosaur's shoulder in particular, running through, chasing that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He kept that objective, kept that realism to it, and that I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the thinking of, because then you're, like the two that came after it, you're making, some really big, full-blown characters out of these critters, and and you've got to deliver on that in a way, when you're investing that much in the invention of this thing, and you got to kind of know it. I don't know, that would be my guess. And and do you want to go there? I don't think Steven would want to go there, or would want to have at that point. Leave that for the next director. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess they eventually did, because in Jurassic World, they had the Indominus Rex take on the camouflage capability. So I guess it was another one of those things that just got pushed over to
Yeah.
the next film and to someone else, like you're
Yeah.
saying, someone willing to go there.
The time Lost World was being made, and when that came out, even for Spielberg, the puppets, if for his visual acuity and his performance sort of demands, just in that short period of time, even the puppets weren't quite cutting it, and so by the time we were doing the third one with Joe Johnston, that was largely the case as well. I don't know if part of that was the pressure cooker of the time limit in making a movie. There's the TV show has this continuity of going on and on and on, and so they're around all the time. Everybody is around all the time on The Mandalorian, so they're able to perfect performance, and the John and the guest directors will edit whatever it is they want the puppet to do, to limit it to what the guys can do really well, whereas in the movie there's like no time for anything, and if it doesn't deliver, bang, then, even though they've rehearsed the raptors moving or whatever, there just isn't time to give it, even hours to perfect the performance. It's like, get it out of here, we'll do it in CG, becomes like that, and the audience's taste too, by this Lost World, they kind of wouldn't go for it. It was kind of like the puppet performance was too slow and too stiff, and not that crackle of, uh, uh, of great CG,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, sign of the times, I guess, like different
Yeah.
expectations, like you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. And now it's gone just to the point of absurdity. Where there's just so much of everything, because they can do anything in CG, so they decide to do everything all at once, and and it becomes just
Yeah.
like a big cartoon.
Yeah, an animated
So,
film practically, right?
yeah. And there's this, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but psychologically, I think there's this sort of buffer in our heads that it's animated, as opposed to when it's a puppet, you're perceiving it differently. You're perceiving it, like, because we've seen, puppets our whole lives in a way, and the imagination works differently. I think there's this slight disconnect when it's CG, when it's all CG, and when the characters are all CG. It's not. It just doesn't have the heart to it. It doesn't have any kind of warmth or connection, or anything resembling reality or humanity.
Yeah, and with the puppets, you can, they're there, they're in a physical space, when you
Yeah.
see it on the screen. Whereas CGI, it's like there's something, like you're saying, just in your mind that just knows just something not quite right. It's just not really quite
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's interesting.
I know what was a fun memory also is I think it's in the making of Lost World. There's a bunch of cartoons of mine in it.
Yeah.
You- Yeah, like which one of these ate your husband, ma'am? And it was a lineup with you
Oh
know
yeah.
a duck bill and a hadrosaur and a raptor.
Yeah.
Well, those drawings, they ended up in kind of the wall of fame in Stephen's conference room. He has a wall with all of these framed cartoons of like when Family Circus had a cartoon about ET or Mad Magazine covers that had to do with Stevens films and whatnot. He has those all framed in there, and my cartoons, there's like half a dozen of them framed on that wall.
See, there you go. So there you go. The man himself
Yeah,
has
it
your
was
work around him. Yeah.
very sweet. Yeah, it's very sweet of him. Yeah, just being on set and being accepted. Of course, and by then, right? Like I said, Rick and I had been around Steven for a couple of years, and so it was really wonderful. It was a wonderful family to be amongst, the king of Hollywood.